Briefly talk about the World Bank and why countries in the BRICS have created an alternative. Because the reality is that the World Bank is not a world bank. It's actually Washington's bank. The World Bank is based physically in Washington, D.C., and the World Bank states very clearly on its website that the United States, quote, remains the largest shareholder of the World Bank Group today. And it even boasts, quote, as the only World Bank Group shareholder that retains veto power over certain changes in the bank structure, the United States plays a unique role in influencing and shaping global development priorities. So the United States is the only country on earth that has veto power in the World Bank. The U.S. basically controls the World Bank. The World Bank website points out, it boasts once again, quote, traditionally, the World Bank president has always been a U.S. citizen nominated by the United States. Again, the World Bank is actually not correctly named. It is the Washington Bank. All we have to do is look at the voting power of different countries inside the World Bank, specifically the World Bank Group's lending arm, which is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the IBRD. When people talk about the World Bank, they're almost always talking about the IBRD. And if you look at it, the United States has roughly 16% voting power, which is significantly more than any other country. The second biggest is Japan with 7% voting power. China has less than 6% voting power, despite having a population of 1.4 billion people, more than 4 times the U.S. population. Even Germany, a major U.S. ally, only has 4% voting power. So the U.S. has 4 times the voting power of Germany. Britain has less than 4. India, with a population of 1.4 billion people, is tied with France, which has a population of less than 66 million people. Each has 3.8% voting power in the World Bank. The BRICS Bank, the New Development Bank, is not like this. There is not one country in the BRICS Bank that has complete control. There is no country that has veto power. And in the 2014 founding agreement, made it very clear that the president of the bank shall be elected from one of the founding members on a rotational basis. So it changes between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It also said in the founding agreement that the vice president must be from another founding member to make sure that there is more democracy. And it made it clear that the initial subscribed capital that was used to found the bank in 2014 shall be equally distributed among the founding members, and the voting power of each member shall equal its subscribed shares in the capital stock of the bank, which is equally shared. So when the BRICS developed the New Development Bank, when they created this as an alternative to the World Bank, they wanted to make sure that it did not mirror the problems in the creation of the World Bank itself, because it's dominated by the United States. They wanted to create a true alternative to that. And the World Bank itself was born in the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference that established also the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and established the dollar as the global reserve currency, giving Washington its exorbitant privilege. So it's no surprise that the Washington Bank, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund are dominated by the U.S. because they are part of the same Bretton Woods structure that put the U.S. dollar at the heart of the global financial system. And none of this is to mention the fact that the World Bank, along with the IMF, has a history of trapping countries in the global south in unpayable debt and then forcing political reforms on those countries, demanding that they impose a series of harsh right-wing neoliberal economic policies as part of the so-called structural adjustment programs, which includes forcing countries to privatize state assets, reduce the minimum wage, cut social services, reduce spending on healthcare and education, privatize all, state-owned companies, deregulate markets. These are the neoliberal right-wing economic policies, the free market fundamentalist policies that are imposed on countries, especially in the global south, when they can't pay back debt to the World Bank or the IMF. The New Development Bank, the BRICS Bank, does not require the same political conditionalities of free market fundamentalism like the Bretton Woods institutions do. And a former consultant who worked with the World Bank, John Perkins, he spelled this all out very clearly in his well-known book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He described the World Bank as, quote, an agent of global empire. And he explained how the World Bank is part of an infrastructure dominated by the United States, along with the IMF and the so-called U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. And together, these institutions cheat poor countries in the global south out of trillions of dollars, and they funnel money into the coffers of huge corporations and the pockets of a few wealthy families who control the planet's natural resources. John Perkins said that economic hitmen at the World Bank and other US-dominated institutions play a game as old as empire. This is imperialism. This is the reality of how the US-led imperialist system functions. And that's why countries in the global south are trying to create new alternatives. The BRICS is one of those alternatives, although it's probably the most significant.